There's that word that I'm trying to teach my daughter. There are a number of words I try to teach my daughter not to use. One of them is should.
Yes, yes.
Because to me, should is not only usually social conditioning, it's also the good and bad versus it just is. It also seems to me that that gets you down into a hole usually of guilt. I
Mm.
should have done this. I should have done that. Well, you ran out of time. So, you know, um, it's so important the internal communication that we have with ourselves that you just pointed out. Now, in that, there is of course a difference between teaching that to a team or teaching that to an individual.
Mm.
Um, and you got very enthusiastic about the teams. Why do you love working with individuals? Because I know you have your club. I know you do train individual people or work with individuals. You just mentioned your webinars, your live events that you do for people. Why do you want to work other than to awaken them? What makes you tick when it comes to working with individuals?
Well, first of all, you have to understand language. Um, there's two kinds of language. There's language that is the thing itself. So if I say, here is a cup, and there's a word cup, there is a cup that goes to the word, or pen, or pencil, woman, flower. There is something in the universe that actually exists that that word is. So there's language that is the thing. Then there's a type of language we call representational language. There are words which are for things that don't exist. So, for example, team doesn't really exist. What a team is a word that represents several individuals in one place or committed to one vision or one mission. But there's no team that walks around chewing gum. It's a word that represents something. So all of my work, even when it's with teams, is really about several individuals. And it's one by one person at a time, one smile at a time, one teaching one skill at a time. Now, what will happen is momentum, which will bring people together that are of the like sorts. So if I have an awakened person, they're excited to be around another awakened person. If I have somebody experienced in something, they're excited to do something with that other person that's also experienced in that. And so we can create momentum and power, and then we can contribute a bigger result. So it's still just individuals, though. But I love the whole aspect of getting several individuals together, aligned and clear with each other and committed to each other and to the mission, because then we can have championship. And championship is a different game. If you ever go to a horse race, they all start at the same place. They all come out of the gates at the same time. But if you watch at the end, there's always a few stragglers. Then there's a bunch of horses in the middle, which is the pack. And then there's a few out front. And I always put circles around those three groups of horses to explain to people there's really three games in life. The stragglers in the back, those are the losers. And I can teach you how to lose because you have to do certain things. You can't just do some things and lose. It's a particular kind of strategy. And
You
then
can
there's,
teach me how to lose.
no, I don't want to teach you how to lose, but I could if I wanted to. But in the middle is the pack, and that's a game, and it's called improvement. And that's the game of how do you get from the back of the pack to the front of the pack? In other words, how do you do a little bit better today than you did yesterday? How do you do a little bit better this year than you did last year? And that's an important game to learn to be a skilled in and an expert at. And so we all want to have that game down. We want to know that game. And when I go into a corporation, people know that game. You get hired because you are an expert in your field. But there's another game that's possible, and that's the game where the few little horses in the front. When I circle that little group, we call that champions. And that game has a different mindset, different assumptions, different ways that it is one, and different things that you do in action and different thinking that you have to have in order to play that game. That game, you have to be willing to commit to something before you know how you can do it.
Mhm.
And in the game of improvement, that's not true. And in the game of life, most people play it as if it's improvement. We want to know what resources we have in place before I'm going to commit to the result that I'm going to declare.
Mhm.
So when you decide that you're going to commit first, and you don't know if you have the resources and you don't know what the circumstances are, what happens is you position yourself in a place where you cause yourself to cause the circumstance that's necessary. So
Mhm.
instead of being at the effect of a circumstance, you determine circumstances. And that's where championship lives.
It is so funny. The reason, part of the reason why I'm laughing while you're talking is because the last week and a half, almost every interview or conversation that I've had ended up bringing horses in. So
Ah, that's so funny.
I was talking with Rex Sykes last week,
I
and
love
we
that.
ended up talking about horses, how you direct life. And it relates to what you were just saying. It's your mindset. For a horse, we were talking about, you don't need to use the reins if you tell with your body and your posture where
Yeah.
you want to go. And, you use horses for that kind of idea of leadership. I always use a wolf pack.
The wolf pack's good too.
It's similar. I like the horses almost better. Um, what is so interesting is that, like you said, it always goes back though to the individual, and I often think that that is something that when I see the general leadership programs and all of that, they're always trying to say, this is it, leader does that, the rest does that, versus, as you were saying, and as I think is so important, it's like individuals. Every individual has their own mindset, they have their own game plan, they have their own patterns and ideas, so you need to bring them together. So I love the way that you're explaining that. I think it's so crucial to understand it's still individuals and then bringing them together. I love the idea of the chewing gum. That was really good. Um, Now, tell us a little bit about your club. And I want to ask you about your club because we've had some comments here in the virtual auditoriums on the various platforms that we're on. And of course, it is one way in which all of the things that you've been saying, that you've been sharing with us, can be looked at even deeper. It's a membership club, I believe, and you have, I don't want to say tons, probably thousands of trainings there. So, what are you doing in that club that you have?
So it's a digital library of my workshops, seminars, speaking engagements, etc. So I kind of call it, it's kind of like HBO on demand of Marcia Martin or Netflix Marcia Martin. And I got this idea before COVID, about a year before, that I should take these old videos that I have because I videoed so many of my workshops over the last 30 years. And that if I edited them and made them so that they had modules so people could access them and know what each module was, and then they could look at it in their own time at their own leisure from their own home, that would be of service. And I charge $10 a month, and it's remarkable, even if I say so myself. It's called the Marcia Martin Club, and you go to marciamartinclub.com. And Marcia, of course, is Marcia, Martin club.com. And for $10 a month, you get access to this library of digital workshops, seminars, speaking engagements, podcasts, interviews. And what we're doing now is we're reorganizing it so that people are really clear about what the topics are, so you can go to what you need, more on demand. But for now, it's just listed as, here's a seminar, here's what it's about, and you can watch it in any order you want. So it's broken down so it's easy. You can watch the first part and it tells what each module talks about. And there's programs in there about communication, about leadership, about building businesses, about how you connect with someone. There's even lots of workshops about men and women and relationships and sex and all sorts of good stuff. And what I want is to be of service to people and to get some of this wisdom out. I was taught by many great mentors and masters, and my life has been magical and incredible, and something I just could never have dreamt up. It's just been wonderful. And so I want to give away some of the things I learned and some of the things that I created in my experiences along the way in terms of wisdom to others. So that's my club. I hope everybody joins. MarciaMartinClub.com, $10 a
Well,
month. It's the best deal
yeah.
in the country.
And I think it's important because I know that people are taking notes while you're talking. You know, I know at the Quantum Leap Forum, I took notes. I still have them. I know now I'm taking notes. So it's like, where do those notes end up?
Yes.
Hopefully you organize, but where do your notes end up? And you've already given so many nuggets today. The idea of, what did you say? HBO on drugs?
Yeah, no, on demand, not on drugs.
Sorry, on steroids. Okay. So
Steroids.
having your own HBO channel, with the experience that you have, it's a resource that I don't think can be underestimated. Just because you have this experience, and like you say, you teach from experience, and it's about the individuals, about communication, it's about awakening, and that is so crucial right now. One of the things that I find so interesting, and I love your view on this, is because you mentioned the game of life, and that
Yeah.
always triggers me. um, I believe that the majority of people, I'm being blunt, the majority of people are in the stands watching life out there. And that's why they're saying it's happening to me. What do I do? They go up to the concession stand again. They grab another TV show or another beer or another ice cream. They're sitting there watching life and wondering why they're not champions, why they're not laughing more, instead of going down there and grabbing that darn ball.
Yeah,
And
that's right.
what do you think about that? Are how how do you deal with people who are really just watching life, and how can we help them? How do they need awakening, or do some people just are some people just not ready for it?
Well, I think all of us have the three personalities or faces in life. One is the face of who we pretend to be. So we've got this face that we put out because we're afraid of something that we're not. We pretend to be confident because we're afraid we don't know how. We pretend to be okay because we're afraid we're not loved. We all have those pretenses. You kind of dress up and operate as if, when really you're questioning your whole self and your whole life in the background. So there's the person I pretend to be, which covers up the person I'm afraid that I am. And behind the person I'm afraid that I am is another person, which is your real self, which is the person who you really are. But we can't connect into that person unless we drop the pretense, become authentic, and face the fears. And part of the work that I do, whether it's on the digital club, whether it's in business, whether it's in a seminar, is I teach people how to drop that facade and to get in touch with their fears in a way that they can actually understand them, where it's easy, where it's comfortable, where it's not too big or too scary, so that they can kind of let some of those fears evaporate and begin to get in touch with who they really are. And the beautiful thing about who we really are is once you've connected there and you've found that place of personal power and you're able to come from it, it keeps growing. And the more it grows, the more you can produce in life, the more you can um, get out there, the more that you can play the game and not have to be watching. And when we're watching is when we're pretending. And when we're watching is when we're afraid to go and jump in. So that whole piece opens up for people whenever they watch one of my seminars or whenever they attend one of my seminars.
So that fear,
Mm.
um, which I could not agree more. It's the fears, the hesitation, and I always find it interesting. Everybody who knows me knows I love talking about kids because they're not jaded. And so like you put a child in front of three doors, they want to open every single door. They
Yeah,
don't hesitate. They're like, let me open this one. Oh, nothing. Oh, what's here? So
yeah.
they're excited about opening those. There is not that fear up until a certain age when parents, society, everybody else trained them to, but what if?
Mhm.
How can we make sure? I know I'm working on that with my child and every other child that I see, but how can we make sure that we as parents, as caregivers, as godparents, whatever we are, step away from instilling fear? Does that question make sense?
Yeah, absolutely, Natalie. And it's a big question and it's an important one. So for me, everything starts, like I said, with your mindset or your perspective or the point of view, your assumption, where you're looking from. So with parenting, and I've done a lot of parenting classes.
Mhm.
I don't have children of my own, but I did take on two abandoned children for 8 years each. And so I also feel like I have about 10,000 munchkins out there
Mhm.
that I'm mentoring on a regular basis.
Right. Yeah.
But I understand children because I understand how the mind works and how
Mhm.
dreams work and how our emotions work and how our thinking works. So I can teach a parent how to be a better parent because of the knowledge that I have in those areas.
Mhm.
And the thing about parents is usually our point of view is we want to protect our children. And that's a good thing for sure. Protection to me, my point of view is you give them enough space so that they can do what they need to do in the space and be safe. But
Mhm.
a lot of people think that what protection means is to keep them from having those experiences. And that point of view doesn't work as well. And so a child begins to take on facades and pretenses because they don't have answers sometimes and they are confused. And sometimes parents make it not okay, that
Mhm.
they should have the answer, that they should know this. So it's a real tough thing being a parent. I take my hat off to you because how I look at it is you're a caretaker. It's not that you own someone.
Yes.
And a lot of parents think that they own their children and they possess them, and then they get kind of entangled up in that relationship. So then whatever their children does means something to them. Like if their children is bad, then they're embarrassed
Mhm.
if they were bad. And it's not that the child is bad anyway, it's that the behavior might have not worked well
Right.
or have been incorrect for the situation, but the child is perfect and good. And so there's so many things. And that's why my work is so important, I think, in the world, because it's at the center of all life skills.
Mhm.
Whether you're parenting or whether you're selling a product or whether you're speaking to a group of 1,000 people and you want to connect and motivate them, or whether you're making an apron or whether you're cooking a meal, it doesn't really matter. It's a result. And all
Mhm.
results come from the same place. But most of us don't understand how that works. They
Right.
don't understand how we think, how our mind works, how perception works, what the laws of the universe are. They don't understand how our emotions work. They don't understand who they are and
Mhm.
where their power comes from. And so a lot of human beings look outside of themselves to get the answer rather than finding the way inside to the answers that are already there. And that's why I'm so excited because there are so many questions. And a big part of those questions have to do with parents and what do I do with this little munchkin, this little
Right.
thing that is so perfect and beautiful, but you don't have to do anything. They'll do it all. What you have to do is create the space for them to do it in. And
Mhm.
that's scary for parents. You know, I have a friend who created a program called the Umbrella Project.
Mhm.
And what she did was she said, I'm going to teach parents how to teach their children to have umbrellas. And umbrellas protect you from the storms.
Yeah.
Most parents want to protect their children by not having a storm happen
Right. 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 Right.
rather
Yes.
than getting them prepared for the storm to be scary and come, because all storms come. But if you have the skills, if you know how to communicate, if you know how to be resilient, if you know how to be flexible, if you
Mhm,
know how to create a different point of view, if you know how to listen generously, I could go on and on and on. Those are the skills that prepare us for the storms.
mhm.
And the storms will come. We will break our leg. We will lose someone we love. We will not make it in a sport that we want to. We will not get the promotion. We will have someone steal our best, bicycle. The storms come. And the children that are successful are the ones that have the skill sets to handle the storms, not the ones that have been protected from having the storms anyway.
Right. I could not agree more, and it is tough, you know.
Yes, it
Um,
is. It is.
my mom always taught us this, and I bring my mom up quite a bit. There's I believe it's a poem by Khalil Gibran, and that is exactly what you're talking about. We're here to help the children put their own step forward on their own path. That's really all we're
Yes.
here to do, and it
Yes.
is tough.
Yeah.
Um, and at the same time, everything that you're saying resonates so much because I always talk. You do this much more on much more than I do, but I've always said it all begins with self-love.
Mm.
Self-love, knowledge of self leads to self-confidence. Once you have that self-confidence and that regardless of what happens, and now adding your words to it, you can weather the storm, right?
Yes.
That's what it's really all about. And so I love the idea of the umbrella. That's really
Yes.
cool. And like you said, whenever I talk about parenting, it's not about you having to give birth to somebody. We all parent. Teachers parent more than their own kids. They parent everybody. If you're a godparent, if you're helping somebody down the street, we all are in this together. And I think that's something we really need to understand as well. Um, you have done amazing work. You keep doing amazing work.
Thank
I love just listening to you, and I want to thank everybody in the virtual auditorium as well. And I know Connie also put a bunch of nuggets out there. So if you missed any parts of the show, go back and read them. And at the same time, don't just read them, but there's
you.
also, of course, the Marcia Martin Club. So briefly, before we have to come to an end, what's up for you next? You've just come back from Europe. What are you doing next? I know you mentioned New York coming up, but what is like the next thing in the next month or two that you're doing?
I'm really creating in a practical form a leadership program for companies. And I'm doing the initial program for the Hard Rock Hotel. And I'm really excited about that. And putting it into some modules and a training program that can duplicate myself. So I'm not going to be needed, but it'll pass on down, and then people can learn how to be leaders. And then I'm really wanting to create more digital programming in addition to my Marcia Martin Club. I want to create programs specifically for different kinds of skill sets that people can buy online and enjoy at their own leisure in public speaking and how to be a great public speaker, in parenting, in relationships, how a man understands a woman and how a woman can empower a man, and how to have a fabulous, sexy, juicy relationship, and what love is all about, and selling, how to make selling fun. And if you don't like selling, how to do it. And if you are afraid of selling, to learn how it works. Communication, so many different programs that I want to create. So that's my next step, those two things.
And yet, I think, or not, and yet, and what is amazing is that it all comes back to the same thing, right? The
Mm,
self, knowing thyself and communicating. Um, whether it's man to man, woman to woman, feminine to masculine energy, is always
yeah,
about how do we communicate also what we want. And that's, of course, where you come in with all of your expertise. And I love that the very beginning, and you've thrown it in a number of times, you don't teach anything that you haven't experienced. It's like I have the experience. I've done this. I know how this works, and you understand the mind, which is so brilliant. Not to mention, you are so graceful. You
oh,
give your time so freely. You know, I just
thanks.
want to point that out. So it's amazing. Any last final words that you want people to take away from this show so they can make this day, tomorrow, and the rest of this week as amazing as possible?
I think one of the things to tell everyone is to take some time for themselves. Close your eyes, get in a still place, see if you can quiet your mind and just be with yourself and to explore your inner realms and the inner universe of you, because that'll bring you closer to who you really are. And who you really are is so magnificent and so big and so powerful and so competent and so loving. Um, just have to meet yourself, is what I would say.
Meet yourself. I should have titled the show that way.
That's a good one.
This is about meet yourself. I like that. See, we just gave away a branding tip. Darn it.
It's good.
Thank you so much,
Mm,
Marcia, Dame Marcia. Everybody, check out her website, check out her club. You've heard all of the nuggets in the last hour. And I am just so grateful that you and I connected on the Quantum Leap Forum last month, 2 months ago. No, last month. And I
yeah.
can't wait to support you more and see what else comes up next. Thank you so much, Dame
Thank you,
Marcia.
Natalie.
And
Thank you.
thank you, everybody in the virtual auditorium. We shall be back next week, same place, same channel. Bye.
Bye.